All right, welcome back to the 34th Waggle edition of PA High School Football Report podcast. He's Dan Sostek. I'm Eric Epler. We got a new guest in the studio. We'll get to this. We'll get to the new guy in a minute. PennLive, of course, signs the checks, the really big checks. And, of course, we fill our week with football banter. That's all we do here. Well, we do other sports as well. But here in studio, in this glorious Belly of the Beast headquarters, we talk football here. So brackets, Dan. We are this close. This close. They're coming down the mountain. One more week of the regular season to go, week 10. And then we start hitting the brackets. District 3 tournament will open. We will get into that in a minute. But first, our special guest. You'll see this guy in the field all over the place. He's been with us now a little over 3.5 weeks. Comes to us from PA Prep Live via Williamsport Sun-Gazette. Evan Wheaton. Evan, say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Evan's been fast learning the mid-state. We use that word mid-state. It's actually not a word.
Yeah.
It's not a word that we put in print, but around here in these parts, we use it a lot. So welcome to the mid-state, Evan. Tell us a little about yourself, your career, although brief. You're a young guy. I'm old. You're getting up there in years too.
I'm about to turn 30.
Yeah. So you're crusty, but
ARP.
Evan's new and young. So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, the topic of age today is actually my birthday. So it's my, as we're recording this, certainly when people are hearing it, so I grew up in Connecticut. I went to college at Springfield College in Massachusetts, the birthplace of basketball. I have been in Pennsylvania now. This is year 3. I was working at the Williamsport Sun-Gazette, so a lot of District 4 stuff. Williamsport, Jersey Shore, front of mine there, Canton, a lot of tough small schools in that area. Last year I was at PA Prep Live. It was kind of bigger schools like 6A, 5A, some 4A. Mostly did the Pioneer Athletic Conference over in Greater Philly, your Spring Ford, your Pope John Paul, having a heck of a year. So right now it's kind of getting back into kind of seeing the Susquehanna's mountain range and
Exactly.
getting another mix of small schools and kind of seeing different levels of talent.
Yeah, we run the gauntlet here from single A up till 6A. We have a pretty, obviously we're the second biggest district in terms of football in the state. So a lot to cover. So we look forward to reading more about you and the stories and football games from you. And like I said, he's been around already. I think on his first day on the job, I think we had you out at 2 assignments real quick. Dan had to take off for something.
Yeah.
Your nail appointment or something.
Yeah, I got my
pedicure.
pedicure. Well, and also Evan didn't mention we have another Patriots fan on the.
Exactly. Another deep Northeast guy.
Yeah,
They just.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more of a PA guy. I was only born in Boston, but still enjoy. Evan and I watched that Patriots game together, and it was finally got to see a win,
that was good stuff.
And some Eastern Michigan Chad Ryland makes this week. So there we go. For
he still has his job.
Yeah,
still has his job.
For our EMU alum,
yes,
Eric Epler.
Little Belichick fairy dust.
Yeah.
It always comes through.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to the high school game. We are 1 week away from the District 3 playoffs. Rather than basically rip through the power ratings, which of course we talked about 2 weeks ago, why we do a power ratings basically is to avoid the arguments and getting coaches in rooms, which we used to do eons ago. It just becomes more favorable and probably a more accurate picture using the power ratings. Anyway, those have become really, really important here the last couple of weeks of the regular season, and they basically determine the seeds and how we move about in the playoffs. What we want to talk about today is basically some of these matchups that could come through. Again, in 1 week of football, these things change dramatically.
Yeah.
Okay? But you've got teams now where you're playing a, let's say, 8-2, 9-1 team. You can kind of predict, without going through the math and breaking out the calculator, where these guys are going to line up and matchups they're going to have in week 11, or if they have a bye week in week 12. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Basically, we're going to focus on the top 3 classifications because there really is no surprise. There is zero surprise in single A. There's not much surprise in 2A, just where they're going to line up, and I think that's pretty much locked in as 1 through 4. And then in 3A, Upper Dauphin going into last week was sort of the X factor. Could they sneak in as far as, again, we're just talking Mid-Penn teams right now. Could they sneak into 3A? And it appears that they will not. So I think 1 through 6 is pretty much settled there as well, with West Perry now hanging on the 1 spot over Wyomissing. So it does appear that those two are on a collision course again for the district title. But anyway, so let's start in 6A, Dan. We'll start with you. And the matchups, if it were to happen this weekend coming up, this is going to be a fun, fun 18 bracket.
Yeah, there are some brackets where you kind of look and you see some, basically some cannon fodder in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no cannon fodder in 6A at all. And I mean, there are so many fun matchups. Even Manheim Township, Cedar Crest. We know how good Manheim Township is, but Cedar Crest is no pushover. They've got some talent there. But to me, and this could change dramatically because Central Dolphins playing Harrisburg this week, and the CD Cumberland Valley. I'm not good at this math stuff, but it feels like CV could potentially jump from 6 to 5. But if CV stays in the 6 and Central York stays in the 3, I mean, Central York's Cumberland Valley is a really interesting matchup to me because we saw that game earlier this year, and we saw what happened. It was a 14-0 game, 14-0 win for Central York, which, on one hand you could say, wow, Cumberland Valley did nothing offensively in that game. On the other hand, you could say Cumberland Valley really shut down one of the better offenses in the district in Central York with one of the best offensive players, and Jules Goff. And then you look at how Cumberland Valley's been playing of late, and they've started to figure out slowly but surely the offense. I mean, putting up 17 points on State College, it's only 5 less than Harrisburg did.
Right.
The offense, it's not the 2000 Rams. It's not the greatest show on turf, but it's a more competent offense than it was to start the season. And that matters because that could be the difference in that matchup against Central York. And all of a sudden, Cumberland Valley's getting to the second round of the district playoffs when, after week 4, we thought they could be headed to 3-7, 4-6 season. So that matchup's really intriguing to me. And then if Wilson, Central Dauphin, we saw that game earlier this year where Central Dauphin kind of surprised some people. One of those teams that are really hard to figure out. There are pretty much any iteration of these matchups is pretty interesting. I think Harrisburg's kind of in a good spot right now in that 2 seed because they handled York High pretty easily week 1, so that seems to be a good matchup for them. But yeah, I think to me it's that CV Central York matchup that I'm interested in. And even if Central Dauphin and Cumberland Valley switch places, CD has a chance to get some revenge on Central York after Jules Goff ran for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns against them.
Yeah, I would like to see a little bit of shakeup as it stands right now, only because if you're going 8-1, Cedar Crest and Manheim Township, been there, done that. We did CD Wilson, which was a hell of a ball game earlier in the season. We did York High and Harrisburg at that crazy Peach Bowl. Yeah. Or what was it? No, it's New York Suburban now, so it's White Rose Football Classic Extravaganza.
Sunflower.
Right, some Sunflower Festival. And of course, Central Cumberland Valley and Central York. So all these have been played so far this year. So I'd like to see a little bit of shakeup. But, right now you have to give the edge to Manheim Township. They've just been plowing everybody that stepped in front of them so far, including Harrisburg. Yeah. An unsuspecting Harrisburg team early in the season. So whether Harrisburg has bounced back.
142-0 in the last 3 games.
There you go. That's been the Blue Streaks. And Hayden Johnson, the quarterback, who's been tremendous. Evan, you got to see Harrisburg on Saturday. Give me your take on the Cougars. First impressions.
I mean, they're playing clean football. They're limiting penalties. They're taking care of the ball, doing things that good teams tend to do around this time of the year. When they get another look at Manheim Township, I mean, I'm thinking about their playoff run last year. Every year is a different team. Every team's a different story. But last year, your only regular season losses were State College and Manheim Township. Last season, they ended up beating both of them en route to that state final appearance. So, it's not impossible if they end up matching up with Manheim Township. When they have that blueprint and they have that confidence, to kind of hit back when they're playing better ball around this time of the year than the beginning of the season, it'd be an interesting matchup.
Well, that's what we talked about last week, right? Is that if Harrisburg plays that clean game, they're really tough to beat. But the question is, can they continue to do that? Because that's what always gets them into trouble. Last year during the playoff run, they played clean football. They also had, I think the one question I do have about their playoff run is last year, Terrell Reynolds had one of the greatest defensive playoff runs I've ever seen. I think he had 11 sacks in 3 games, something like that.
It's a good amount.
Yeah, it was one of the most. He was playing like a man possessed, and a lot of those games were blowouts. But one of the reasons they were blowouts is because the other team was giving the ball up at their own 20, 25 because Terrell Reynolds was just getting in the backfield, stripping it. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue that without that sort of presence. They have some good pass rushers there, but with Ryan Epps and everything. But I don't think they have a Terrell Reynolds, and I don't think I don't think that they're gonna pretend they do either. So.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too because no one really talks about Manheim Township's defense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at their scores, we had
Hayden Johnson on the podcast last week, and he was quick to point that out, saying that everyone talks about the offense. But
it's easy to overlook those guys. It's the same way it's easy to overlook McDevitt's defense and all the points that those guys put up. So it's just there's a thin line with Harrisburg of being confident and cocky, and the cocky not in the way where it's puff your chest out, this and that,
because they need to play like
that.
But
right. That confidence has to be there, and they have to really sort of sink their teeth in early against an opponent like Manheim Township, because it could falter away when you get down 10, 14 nothing. These guys seem to be able to pull that extra gear. Yeah. But of course, you never want to get down 14 nothing to a team like Township. So anyway. All right, let's move on to Class 5A. Congratulations to Lower Dauphin. They played their way in. They were sort of a question mark in this scheme of things 2 weeks ago. Played their way in. Goal line stance against Hershey. Got them the win. That's going to matter. It does not matter what the Falcons do against Bishop McDevitt. Also, I think the one team that may be in a little bit of trouble if some things topple or go against them would be Greencastle Antrim. Right now they're in, but they're right on that fence line. And I don't think the Blue Devils will fall out of the 12, but I think it's going to be really, really razor thin.
Missing that, I feel like missing that one non-conference game that doesn't count could come back to bite them.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Playing it, and I get it. You're in Greencastle.
Yeah,
you should be playing a team or two from West Virginia or even Maryland. It makes sense, but there is that sort of asterisk that this could hurt you. Yeah, that not having that extra win in state or against a PIAA opponent could hurt you. So. Greencastle plays Shippensburg, which has found a little confidence here in the last couple of weeks. They want to certainly end their season strong. So other than that, though, in 5, there's not a lot of either ors. It's just a matter of where the seeding pops through. So that'll be a haywire bracket to be sure.
Yeah, how about Exeter Township falling, I believe, all the way from number 3 to number 7?
Yeah, lost to Conestoga Valley, and boom. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that if the season ended today, that'd be the matchup for Lower Dauphin. I feel like Lower Dauphin would not. That would be a pretty tough draw, I think, for as a 7. So that's a pretty good. I know Exeter is not the Exeter team it was last year, but it's still Exeter Township. It's still a really good program that still is 8-1 on the year, and their loss was a 1 touchdown loss. So for me, there's a lot of the teams at the top are obviously going to be haven't kind of sporting that bye. Cedar Cliff would play the winner of that Exeter Township Lower Dauphin game, which would be interesting because Exeter eliminated Cedar Cliff with the Jonte Morris 2 years ago. But I think.
Did Jonte carry it?
I don't think it was 50 times.
Not 50 times.
I think that was the Shippensburg game. That was a fun one.
By the way, congratulations to Cole Bartram.
Oh, yeah.
For Northern.
Yeah.
We didn't say it in the beginning, but as the reports were coming through,
We couldn't believe it.
and this is maybe some people don't know this, but when we're at a game, either whether we're in the press box or on the field, the phone doesn't stop. There are literally between, I don't know, 150 and 200 notifications on your Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, on your X.
Yeah.
Every probably 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And not only that, but text messages come through from all of us.
Yeah.
Hey, look at this guy. This guy might be injured. There's been a break in the action. Whatever. And we got a text from Brian.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like at 7:08 p.m. It was not like even after 12 minutes. But he basically said that Bartram had 213 yards and 3 touchdowns
in the first quarter.
And I think I just ignored Brian after that. I thought he was playing a joke. I'm like, come on. I mean, I know Northern likes to run number 7, and you should run number 7 because he's a beast to bring down. But rolling up 500 rushing yards and 9 TDs in a football game is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think it's only happened more than 500 yards. I think maybe 3 or 4 times.
I think that performance would have single-handedly beaten my fantasy team this week. So
that definitely would.
I think it might have.
Just especially if you're in a bonus league.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty good average too.
So Northern will not be in the playoffs, but we have to give a shout out to that before this.
I don't know. I want to know. And he
has to wrestle.
That's the thing. He probably just said, "Listen, I don't need any ice." But that would have been an ice bath for you and me for about a day and a half. Yeah. But anyway, congratulations to him. That was an unbelievable performance. So anyway, all right, let's move to 4A. Evan, I'm looking mostly at the bottom half of the 4A bracket. This could really get interesting. With a team known as Milton Hershey. Now, follow me here. I think the Spartans right now are sitting at 6, okay? Mm-hmm. And that would put them right now in a position where they get a first-round bye into the it would be into the quarterfinals.
Yep.
But they have Cedar Cliff this week.
Yeah.
So, obviously, they're going to go into that game as an underdog, okay? Cedar Cliff, assuming Cedar Cliff can pull it off, and beat the Spartans, it looks like the Spartans will fall to 7. Now, this is not a bad thing for Milton Hershey. Being in that 7 spot essentially gets you a home game against the 10 in the first round, what would be week 11. And then you would probably lock up with a Twin Valley team that is very good, but plays very similar style and pace to Milton Hershey. So that game could be Pinball City, which is something I would like to see.
Well, and Milton Hershey's not a team that, lacks talent, right? It's more, it's kind of, it's the depth, it's the sometimes the line gets a little worked, but the talent, especially on the ends, they're up there with anyone. I think they're up there with almost any team in this classification besides McDevitt.
Right. And that's the point, too, Evan. You want to avoid McDevitt, who's going to be number 1 right at the top of the bracket.
No, like when I saw Milton Hershey, they were just able to respond really well with Mifflin County. It was about 6 lead changes in that game.
Right.
I mean, they go right to the end, based on what I've seen. And, I think if they're able to get a bye, like you said, it obviously helps any team out. But, I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see kind of how that shapes up.
Yeah, if they do get the bye, if they are sitting 7 or 6 and they get the bye, then you're still going up against the Twin Valley team, or maybe, depending if how it switches with Manheim Central. I think Jeff Boger would take, getting into a match with a Manheim Central in a semifinal.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing. And I'm not saying, I would have Manheim Central favored considerably in that game just because of what they've done. But I think Milton Hershey would have a puncher's chance because of all that athleticism. So finding a good hole for Milton Hershey, I think, is key.
And I'm not even I know Susquehanna Township had a bad loss. I mean, I don't even know if you can call it a bad loss. East Pennsylvania was a very good team, but it was. I think it was a game they probably should have won.
It was a game they should have won.
Yeah. Yes. But we've seen them kind of, the roller coaster of Susquehanna Township. would you be surprised if they win a couple games in this bracket either? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost their first game. I wouldn't be surprised if they avoid the McDevitt rung of the bracket and make it all the way to the title game. They're just a team that, it depends. It's really, them and Milton Hershey are very similar to me in that I think on the right night they can play with almost any team in this classification besides McDevitt. I mean, it is kind of silly because we feel like we're just playing for second place in this bracket. Right. And I believe only the title team makes the state.
Yes, it does.
So it is kind of silly, but you never know what happens. Maybe McDevitt has the flu or something. It really stinks to kind of to talk in those, but it kind of goes to show how silly.
Yeah, you can't hide it. Yeah. I mean, you just can't hide it. It's just there is a level of talent there.
Milton Hershey has played McDevitt tougher than any team over the last 2 years, and the scores like a combined 100-20.
Right. It's you got to play. Yeah, you have to play hair on fire like Milton Hershey likes to do, but it's just again, you're not only trying to slow down that offense, the Bishop McDevitt, but you're trying to get points against that defense.
Yeah.
Which we hardly talk about and just shows up week after week after week.
East Penn, Lampeter, or Strasburg, if that's what we get in the second round, would be an interesting game as well. I still don't really have a good feel on what this East Pennsboro team is. I know that they have a lot of. I think they're not going to lose a game because of making mistakes or not having the right mindset going into the game. I think if they lose a game, it's going to be because they're a little outgunned. I think that East Pennsboro, Lampeter, Strasburg game, if that's what we get, is a winnable game for East Penn.
That could be a high-scoring game as well, too. Yeah. But LS is a very good program. A lot of these teams, too. LS, man, I'm set. These teams know how to win big games. They've been in postseasons every single year for however long stretch. Any other teams, Evan, that you've seen so far you've got to cover? I know it's only been 3 weeks.
In terms of 4A?
Just overall, that you see, that you like, basically how they play, that might have a shot.
Well, I know we already touched on it, but like what Dan was saying about Cumberland Valley's defense playing kind of good early on with that Central York, obviously lost 14-0, but I think I saw a little bit of that against State College, You get 10 points, 7 of that was on a pick six.
Right.
You take that away, it's a very good State College team that was held to 3 points offensively, and then, a goal line stand right at the end. I mean, Cumberland Valley's defense is kind of red hot right now, I think, so that kind of sticks out to me as well.
It's interesting because I got to see Cumberland Valley probably week 4, and I would have never thought this defense, particularly the defense, would close the gap as much as they have. I mean, they probably still haven't played their best defensive performance, and we're talking about, only 14-0 Central York and then in competing and beating State College, holding them to 3 points, like you said. I would have never thought that. I just thought there were too many holes to fill, and they would never sort of tighten it up enough to get to this point. But they certainly proved me wrong, and they're in solid position in 6A, and it's one of those teams you don't want to play now. You just don't want to play them right now.
And I know we aren't going to talk too much about 1A through 3A, but there's a chance we get a very real chance we get Trinity Camp Hill, a rematch of that game in the first round, and I think that was, even though Trinity won that game, that was probably one of the more surprising results we've had recently, just because how banged up Camp Hill was in that game. And they were still able to make it a 14-13.
14-13.
Although there was no Messiah Mickens in that game, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But I'm sure Trinity kind of wants a second chance at that one to kind of make it right. And then, West Perry's got their big Steel High game. They're playing to hold on to that number 1 seed in 3A. That's a big deal because, just just having that home field advantage over Wyomissing, if they were able to hold that, if they were able to, kind of get to that championship game, but this year it's in Elliotsburg instead of Wyomissing.
That's right.
Big too.
Yeah, that would be a great game to see in Elliotsburg. It really would, because anyone who goes to Wyo is in serious trouble.
Yeah.
Plus with that damn cannon.
Oh, yeah.
Good Lord.
That
is a heart attack waiting for happy. You and I are old now. You're almost 50.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I think I need to get one of those heart monitors
Yes.
for those games because
you need to
you
take care of
never remember it.
Never.
You always forget it's going to happen.
And the guy, after he does it too, he giggles.
Yeah.
He loves it. Loves his job. Anyway, you'll get a chance to experience that, Evan.
I think I think that game deserves a rematch. Trinity Camp Hill. I mean, the way it went down. I seem to be going out to these goal line games.
Yeah, right.
Like that was another one that ended up instead of taking the extra point, playing for overtime, they try to go for the win.
Which I agree. I think that was the right call.
I do too. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Getting an argument there.
Having it go down to the wire there. Both teams, obviously no Messiah Mickens for Trinity.
Right.
Camp Hill banged up. It'd be nice if if they're able to get some rest and meet again. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. I think that'll do it, guys. Like I said, week 10. Get out and watch some football. We'll talk everything about brackets and matchups and stuff next week. This has been the PA High School Football Report podcast. For Dan Sostek, Evan Wheaton, I'm Eric Epler. Come back and see us next week.